Good morning, dear children. It is one of the videos for class 11 students from the book Snapshots, the chapter 2, The Address by By-Amiya. It is the second video in this connection, and here I would like to tell you that what did happen in the next part. Here Mrs. Darling lived in the address 46 Marconi Street. Nearly after the war, the narrator visited the address her mother had given her. After the war was over, really it was disastrous condition. But she remembered that there must be that very woman, Mrs. Darling. So she goes to her address, and she was woman with broad back. Who was Mrs. Darling? She was the woman with a broad back. Mrs. Darling looked at the narrator searchingly, and Mrs. Darling did not like to show any kind of recognition. She kept staring in silence. She saw that the narrator, who had recognized her mother's green knitted cardigan, was looking at it. She half hid herself behind the door and refused to see her. How selfish this woman was. After the war, Mrs. S is dead. She is no more. And she had noticed before that, when she had come to her house, that everything was almost lost. She was surprised to see the narrator, who had survived after the war. What does happen in the first visit? You must have a brief understanding. The narrator traces Mrs. Darling, number 46 Marconi Street address to claim her family's property. Mrs. Darling does not like to recognize her. Mrs. Darling says she does not recognize the narrator, but the narrator very well recognizes her, as she was in complete sense of understanding who that person may be or might be. It was now evident that Mrs. Darling had betrayed the narrator's mother. Why, I have already told you. Marga was terribly pinced. Why was she pinched? Because he did not recognize her. Disappointed, and she understood that Mrs. Darling really betrayed her. She was turning away to go when someone appeared at the window. Probably it was Mrs. Darling's daughter. She asked her mom who she was, and Mrs. Darling gave her a discouraging reply, because she did not like that someone could recognize her. That was how the first visit ended. And this visit really depressed her, but she did not lose her courage and sense of understanding. It was her second visit. The narrator grew impatient after a while, so she decided to visit Mrs. Darling's house once again. When she rang the bell at house number 46, Mrs. Darling was not present at her house. Her daughter was there. She welcomed the narrator, By-Amiya. The daughter had no idea how her mother had looted the utensils, furniture from the narrator's house. All that she knew was that Her mother had bought these precious antiques on an auction. Really, this was the story behind it. Mrs. Darling's daughter was quite unaware, and she went to notice all these things when she saw the Hanukkah candle mirror, which is used for just igniting, and it is made of precious metal, so costly it is. The daughter was proud of the expensive utensils and furniture that she possessed, but she was quite unknown that her mother had anyhow managed to get it. It was the thing that really quite ununderstandable. The narrator decides not to wait for Mrs. Darling. She leaves the house, she forgets the address. She was welcomed. She went in. She could recognize that very tablecloth which had a burn mark which could never be repaired. She could see all the utensils that were made of what silverware or something that were so cutleries that were so important that she realized. And she was feeling very proud. Mrs. Darling's daughter felt very proud of him. And really, the girl entertained her with a cup of tea. The girl poured her tea from a white pot which had a gold border on the lid. And this was really very interesting thing. She remembered that it was their tablecloth which had a burn mark that had never been repaired. And when she opened the box and took out some spoons, the narrator placed the box. Mrs. Darling's daughter said that it was an old thing. They had got lots more, and she pointed round the room. The narrator knew very well which things she meant. She remarked that the cutlery, spoons, forks, and knives all were made of silver. The girl laughed. She walked to the sideboard and wanted to open a drawer. The narrator felt perturbed. She was quite worried. The objects linked with her mother aroused memories of her former life. How comfortably she lived. How good was her mother. At first she was eager to see them, but now they had lost their value, since they were severed from her mother and were stored in strange surroundings. Moreover, they were useless to her in her present state, because she lived in a small rented room with a space for no more than a handful of cutlery fitted in a narrow table drawer. She could not have even such enough money with which she could rent a big house. She had lost everything, mother, house, everything. She resolved, she decided to forget the address. She wanted to leave the memories of her mother and the war behind her, and then decided to move on. She goes to the railway station, takes the train, and comes back to her new residence, where she lived in a very miserable condition. But the memories really remind her all the things that she had in her mind. It clearly indicates that how shrewd, cunning, and this deceptive woman Mrs. Darling was, who really did not like only the things to possess, but she also wished that the narrator and her family members must be killed in the war. Such a man is there. Thank you, children. Thank you. I will tell you something more in the next video, and I hope that you must have understood the lesson nicely. But something more I will tell you how. Thank you.